Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, and fellow Americans.
Hello, President Obama. Why are we sending billions of dollars in aid to foreign countries when we can't get our own country working?
Why do we vote on Tuesday?
I was wondering if minimum wage will go up in 2012.
How do you plan on getting anything done in this election year with this Congress?
How do you plan to help students pay off student loans?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever presidential Google Plus Hangout live on YouTube. I'm Steve Grove, coming to you from our Google headquarters here in Mountain View, California. And I'm pleased to welcome President Obama, live from the West Wing of the White House. Mr. President, welcome to Google Plus.
Great to talk to you, Steve.
We're excited to get started today, Mr. President. Over 250,000 people visited the White House YouTube channel and submitted their questions for you. And as you can see, Mr. President, it's not just me and you here in this Hangout. We're joined by 5 of those people right here. We're ready to put you in the hot seat. Let's meet them all now. We have first Jennifer Waddell in Fort Worth, Texas.
Hi, Mr. President.
Hey, Jennifer.
It's an honor to meet you. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, and I have 2 beautiful girls. Nice to meet you.
You can't be daughters.
Next, we have Paras Patel, and he is from Detroit, Michigan.
Hi, Mr. President. I'm from Michigan, and I went to college in Detroit, and now I'm a first-year med student at the University of Chicago.
Great to talk to you. Hope Hyde Park's treating you well.
It's great.
We're also joined by Adam Clark and his classmates in Fremont, California.
Hi, Mr. President. I'm a senior from John F. Kennedy High School in Fremont, California. And my teacher, Ms. Santion, and all my classmates would just like to thank you for giving up a little bit of your time to let us all be a part of this Google interview.
Great to talk to you. And thanks for wearing a tie today.
You got to dress up. It's an interview with the president. We're also joined by Christine Wolf, and she is in Evanston, Illinois, Mr. President.
Hello, Mr. President. It's an honor to meet you. I'm a mother of 3 children, and I'm a children's book writer in Evanston, Illinois.
Great to talk to you, Christine. Tell everybody in Evanston I said hi.
I sure will.
Thanks.
And finally, we have Ramon Ray, and he is in Montclair, New Jersey.
Hi, Mr. President. I'm Ramon. I love small businesses. I love technology. I play piano, and I also love doing puppet shows for poor children. Thanks for being here.
Great to talk to you, Ramon.
All right, Mr. President. Well, some of our participants here in this Hangout voted for you in the last election, and some of them did not. But everyone here submitted a question for you on YouTube. And to kick off our conversation today, we're going to start with the YouTube question on our first topic of discussion, the economy. And it comes to us from Anthony Millian in Greenville, South Carolina. Let's watch.
Mr. President, thank you for your time. My name is Anthony Millian, and I'm currently residing in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a student. I'm taking 15 credits in order to get an accounting degree. I also work a 40-hour-a-week job. There's one problem. I barely make ends meet. The question I want to ask you today is this. Will you promote a living wage for people like me who are responsible, work, go to school, and take charge of their lives? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I just want to commend you for working hard at school and at work. And I think this is representative of the spirit that's out there in this country. Nobody expects anybody to do anything for them. Everybody, I think, is working hard, trying to make ends meet and trying to get ahead in what's been a very difficult economy over the last 3 years. But we are starting to see some signs that the economy is picking up. We've created 22 million jobs over the last, or 3 million jobs over the last 22 months. And we saw the largest boost in manufacturing jobs that we've seen since the 90s. Best job growth that we've seen since 2005. But we've still got a lot more to do. And for young people who are going to school and about to go into the workplace, a couple things I have to do. Number one is I have to keep this recovery going. That's why it's so important for us to continue to make sure that for example, we extend the payroll tax cut so that you don't have $40 coming out of your paycheck this year at a time when things are already tight for you. For students, we're going to have to make sure that we continue to build on some of the steps we've taken to make college more affordable, and that includes extending the tax credits that we've passed that are saving some families up to $10,000 a year, also expanding the Pell Grant program. That obviously is helpful to young people like yourselves. And then what we have to do is to make sure that as businesses grow, as we're promoting new industries like manufacturing in this country, that we're also making sure that workers have a chance to benefit. And that means, I'm a strong believer in the minimum wage, but it also means that we are making sure that people like you who are working hard aren't being disadvantaged by the tax code the way it is right now. And that's part of the reason why, as we're reducing the deficit or taking other steps to balance the budget, that we don't put the burden on you as much as we put on people like me who can afford it.
We want to get our Hangout involved here. Let's go to Jennifer. She also submitted a question on the economy. Jennifer?
Hi, Mr. President. My husband has an engineering degree with over 10 years of experience, and he was laid off 3 years ago and has yet to find a permanent job in his field. My question to you is, why does the government continue to issue and extend H-1B visas when there are tons of Americans, just like my husband, with no job?
Well, Jennifer, I don't know your husband's specialty, but I can tell you that there's a huge demand around the country for engineers. Now, obviously there are different kinds of engineers. So a civil engineer, for example, right now may not be getting as much work because we're not building our infrastructure as much as we should, which is part of the reason why in the State of the Union I said, let's put folks to work, not just construction workers, but also engineers and architects, rebuilding our schools and our roads and our bridges and so on. Where you're seeing a lot of specialized demand is in engineering that's related to the high-tech industries. And now what industry tells me is that they don't have enough highly skilled engineers. If your husband's in that field, then we should get his resume and I'll forward it to some of these companies that are telling me they can't find enough engineers in this field. So it's going to vary, but as a basic matter, there's a huge demand for engineers around the country right now.
I understand that,
yeah.
But how, I mean, given the list that you're getting, I mean, we're not getting that. I mean, you said in the State of the Union address for business leaders to ask themselves what can they do to bring jobs back to America. But why do you think that the H-1B program is so popular with big corporations?
Jennifer, can I ask you what kind of engineer your husband is?
He's a semiconductor engineer.
See, it is interesting to me, and I meant what I said. If you send me your husband's resume, I'd be interested in finding out exactly what's happening right there, because the word we're getting is that somebody in that kind of high-tech field, that kind of engineer, should be able to find something right away. And the H-1B should be reserved only for those companies who say they cannot find somebody in that particular field. So that wouldn't necessarily apply if, in fact, there are a lot of highly skilled American engineers in that position. So I'd be interested, I will follow up on this because I'm interested in finding out, and maybe we can get some information as to why your husband's been having trouble getting placed. We want to encourage more American engineers to be placed, and that's part of the reason why it's so important for us to boost American manufacturing.
I want to get more
I appreciate your I was going to say, I just appreciate your response, Mr. President. I'll have to take you up on that.
Thank you.
Great. You know, Paris Patel from Detroit also submitted a question on the economy. Paris?
I did. So, Mr. President, I really appreciate how you saved the auto industry. You know, I'm from Michigan and my dad works for GM. So, you know, to see that was just great. I think it was the right thing to do. But what I'm really curious about now is how do we make sure that the auto industry is competitive long term and not just for the next couple of years? Because we face competition from all these global competitors. And, you know, I'm just wondering, what is our national strategy to make sure that America is the best place to build, manufacture, engineer, and sell a car?
Well, the point about Detroit applies to all kinds of manufacturing industry, and I tried to highlight this in the State of the Union. I want us to be a country that is building and selling our products all around the world, not just building our economy based on debt and financial transactions. Sure. And the auto industry is a good example of what's possible. We've started a restructuring where workers and management got together and said, how are we going to make sure that we've got the most efficient operation possible. Started designing better products, and one of the things that the U.S. auto industry has started to do is to look at what are going to be the trends of the future. And one of the biggest trends is making sure that we're creating fuel-efficient cars. So we doubled fuel efficiency standards for cars and trucks for the first time in 30 years. And Detroit is responding by building cars that are getting better fuel efficiency. But now the key is for us to make sure that we're catching that next wave of innovation. So one of the reasons that we've made an investment in clean energy, including the batteries, the high-tech batteries that go into electric cars, is because our expectation is that that's going to be one of the places where there's going to be a huge surge in demand. And I want to make sure those advanced batteries are made in the United States and they go into cars made in the United States. So we've got to continually anticipate what is going to be the demand, not just here in the United States, but also in other countries at a time when we expect that oil prices are going to continue to go up over the long term.
Let's go to another YouTube question, Mr. President. This one's from Linda Barrett, and she is in Portland, Oregon. She's been part of the Occupy protests in Portland. Let's watch.
Mr. President, I voted for you. I'm paying my taxes. I am unemployed 5 years now, and I need help. I'm 52. What am I going to do? How will I recover from this? Do you have a plan for me?
Well, the most important thing I can do for folks who are out of work right now is to grow the economy. And the steps that we laid out in the State of the Union, making sure that we're providing strong incentives for companies to invest here in the United States instead of building plants overseas, which means that we change our tax codes so that we're rewarding companies who are insourcing as opposed to outsourcing. That's key. Making sure that we're improving skills for all Americans by, for example, matching up community colleges with businesses and designing programs that actually lead to a job right here and right now. There are models out there that work. We've got to get more of those models spread out across the country. Making sure that we've got an American energy strategy that is opening up expansion of oil and gas resources, but also is focused on clean energy like solar and wind and biodiesel. And making sure that we've got a rules of the road that are working for everybody so that our tax code is fair, everybody's doing their fair share, that people aren't exploiting loopholes, that consumers aren't being taken advantage of. That's the foundation for an economy that's going to last into the long term. Obviously, for someone who's been laid off and they're 50 or older, it's a lot tougher. But one of the folks that I highlighted at the State of the Union was somebody who, in their 50s, had retrained, going through this community college program, and are now in a job that's given them a living wage and the kind of benefits that give them some sense of security. So it is possible, but we've got to create more of those ladders of opportunity for everybody.
Ramon into this conversation, Mr. President. He's a small business owner in Montclair. Ramon, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, thank you, Mr. President. It's really a delight to talk to you today. Mr. President, a few weeks ago, you took steps to consolidate the various agencies and departments that were focused on the business sector. I work with a lot of small businesses, and I'm curious, do you think that instead of helping, which I'm sure it will do in part, that this may dilute or diminish the government's focus on small businesses, especially if the SBA is no longer independent, it's consolidate with other organizations? Will that diminish the focus that we small businesses have to the federal government?
The answer is no, Ramon, and here's why. First of all, I elevated this SBA administrator to a cabinet level position so that they're talking directly to me. There's nobody in between me and the SBA when they're advocating on behalf of small businesses. Secondly, the big problem we have right now when it comes to our various business programs is it's really hard to navigate for small businesses. They may have to go to 4 different agencies or 5 different agencies to figure out where do I get a loan? How do I export? What kind of assistance and technical training can I obtain? And our whole goal here is to set up a one-stop process for a small business. So a business goes on a website, instead of navigating 15 different agencies and 30 different programs. I want them to be able to go to one place and be able to answer all their questions. That's going to be especially important for small businesses because they can't afford to hire a bunch of accountants and lobbyists and lawyers and to try to work through a big bureaucracy. They just want some simple answers. If they need financing, how does the program work? What do they do to apply? Who do they talk to? And that's the kind of streamlined process that we want to set up, not just in the business sector, but for all our various government programs. Because right now, I'm a strong believer that SBA is a huge help to small businesses all across the country.
Yes.
But we're also living at a time when our government has to be more efficient, more lean, because we've got a lot of need and we don't have as many resources as we used to have in terms of being able to advocate on behalf of small businesses. So the leaner it is, the more efficient it is, the better it's going to be for those small businesses. And I'll still have a SBA administrator in my cabinet who's advocating directly just for small businesses.
Great. And can I just add to that, Mr. President, that just my 2 cents to highlight that, just make sure the big businesses, who already have the resources, that they don't crowd us out in this, combined, that we small businesses still have that kind of direct line as you go forward. That's all I would
That's a priority for us because small businesses create most of the new jobs. And, I don't know if you noticed in the State of the Union, we also talked about the importance of startups and entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we're trying to get Congress to do is to pass legislation, and there's some bipartisan support for this, that just makes it easier for startup companies to obtain financing or to use R&D that's already out there. And that's something that we're going to continue to focus on because if we can get more startups, more entrepreneurs, getting their ideas to market faster, that's going to help contribute to overall economic growth and job growth.
Thank you.
Let's get Christine Wolf into the conversation here from Evanston. Christine?
Mr. President, prior to your taking office, I was never politically active, but since then it's been obvious to me that there is no dialogue out there to help our nation's children understand the economic situation that we are faced with. Children see and hear everything, and they see and hear far more than we even realize. They're also exposed to words and phrases like foreclosure and cutting back and crisis. I was raised in a generation in which discussions about financial matters were either taboo or the messages were confusing. Oftentimes, wealth equaled success. And I think we all know in this day and age that that's just simply not true. What I'm asking is what you would do to help create a new narrative for the children of our nation, to help them to understand and look ahead to life beyond this economic crisis that we're in.
Well, first of all, obviously I've got 2 girls at home, so I'm having to have conversations with them all the time about what's going on with the economy, and over the dinner table I try to explain to them what's happened. I think that one of the most important things I can do as president is just to remind this generation that previous generations have had tougher times, whether it's my grandparents going through the Great Depression or some of the tough recessions that we went through in the 80s. We've always come out on top as long as we work together to solve some of these problems. And I think it's very important for all of us to remember that whatever the challenges that are out there, we can work through this. We still have the best universities on earth. We still have the best entrepreneurial spirit, some of the best business people on earth, the best workers on earth, the most productive. And so we're going to do fine if we make some good decisions. And what I'm trying to do for kids and everybody else is to remain hopeful about where we're going. This economy went through a real body blow, but it's improved. Now, more personally, one of the things that we want to do is to actually increase financial literacy among kids so that they have a better sense of making good choices. Actually, we have a whole panel that's working with the Department of Education and school districts so that some of the concepts that we're talking about don't seem so foreign, because part of what's important is empowering our kids to be smart consumers of financial information, so that when they're going out and taking a student loan, they have a sense, we call it know before you owe. If they're going out there to buy their first home, we want them to be well equipped to make good decisions and not just judge themselves on how much am I purchasing, but judging themselves on, am I making good decisions that will empower me so that I don't get into a debt trap, so that I'm not just being judged by how much I'm consuming, but rather how much I'm producing and how much I'm contributing to the overall society. So that's a conversation that on the one hand we can have as a country as a whole, but each of us as parents are also going to have to make sure that we're trying to instill those kinds of old-fashioned American values into our kids.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Mr. President, we're going to move on to the topic of foreign policy next. And to get us started, we're going to go to a YouTube question from Boston. Let's take a look.
My name is Robert Hairwald. I'm a homeless veteran, downtown Boston. And my question for Mr. Obama is, why are we sending money to places like Pakistan and other places that are known to give money to terrorism? And I don't understand that. Why are we sending money to all that when we got guys out here, hundreds of homeless, especially in D.C. That's like the biggest city with the most homeless, the capital. I'm just wondering why we're sending money over there.
Well, first of all, my goal is to have no homeless veterans. And part of what I want to see happen, this is part of the reason why we've increased our VA budget every year ever since I came into office. One of our key goals is eliminate veterans homelessness. And the other thing is making sure that when our guys come back and our gals come back, that they're getting the kind of support and the training that they need to find a job in this economy. They're handling million-dollar pieces of equipment and leading their colleagues into incredibly dangerous situations. They can make a huge contribution in terms of rebuilding America, and we've got to make sure that we're putting in place programs for them. With respect to the general question of foreign aid, because even in your teaser, there was a young woman who asked about that. Yeah. It's important for folks to understand we only spend about 1% of our budget on foreign aid, but it pays off in a lot of ways, because if we are contributing to an improving economy in a country, if we're giving people more opportunity, if we're preventing a famine that results in huge numbers of refugees, that potentially saves us from having to deal with some military crisis somewhere down the road that could be even more expensive. So aside from it being the right thing to do as a very wealthy country, us trying to help develop other countries, it's also important to make sure that people understand this is part of our overall security strategy. I do agree that a country like Pakistan is one where our relations have gotten more strained because there are a lot of extremists inside that country, and either for lack of capacity or political will, they haven't taken them all on. In some cases, they've been very cooperative with us. In other cases, not as much as we want. So we're always trying to find the right balance of making sure that if we're providing them with aid, they're also providing us with assistance in terms of making our people safer. And there are times where they disappoint us in terms of their performance, but we're going to keep on trying to engage as many countries as possible, mainly because it's good for our national security.
Let's hear from Hangout for a second. I'd be curious if anyone here in the Hangout, raise your hand if you think we still spend too much money on foreign aid. Anybody? Jennifer, let's hear from you. What did you think of the president's response to Robert's question?
I mean, I understand, what you're trying to do, and I agree. I don't think we should, not help, but I guess when you see the number of people who don't have jobs and you have a college-educated husband, I mean, how are you supposed to tell your children? I just, when you see the hurting and you see the homeless, it's just, I guess, hard for Americans in the middle class to grasp why we do give as much as we do.
Yeah. I understand sort of the source of frustration, but I think it's important to remember, Jennifer, like I said, we spend 1% of our total budget on foreign aid. Some folks think it's like 25%. I mean, it's a very small portion. And most of the foreign aid we provide is to countries that are also helping us with our national security. And so oftentimes when we're providing that aid for a country, we may be saving a larger amount in terms of what we would have to deal with if they weren't cooperating with us. So that's part of the reason why I always emphasize our defense budget and our foreign aid budget should be seen as an overall package, an overall strategy to keep America safe. Because what we don't want to do is have a situation where certain countries completely collapse, and then the next thing you know, we're having to send our guys in there at huge potential risk and huge cost to taxpayers instead. But it also means when we're providing aid that these countries need to help themselves. And instead of just giving charity, one of the things we're trying to do is to help them develop, so hopefully at some point they become consumers of our goods and services, and we can sell stuff into those countries, and it helps grow the overall pie and helps create a situation where American businesses are doing better as well.
Let's go back to YouTube, Mr. President, on an issue that's been on the front page of the New York Times today. The question comes from Evan in Brooklyn, New York. Let's watch.
Mr. President, since you took office, you've ordered more drone attacks in your first year than your predecessor did in his entire term. These drone attacks caused a lot of civilian casualties. I'm curious to know how you feel they help the nation and whether you think they're worth it.
Well, Steve, I can't hear you right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I wanted to explain the reference to the New York Times just because the story today focused on the use of drones in Iraq, actually. So.
Well, you know, that story, I think, was a little overwritten. The truth of the matter is we're not engaging in a bunch of drone attacks inside of Iraq. There's some surveillance to make sure that our embassy compound is protected. As a general proposition, the question that was posed, I want to make sure that people understand actually drones have not caused a huge number of civilian casualties. For the most part, they have been very precise, precision strikes against Al-Qaeda and their affiliates. And we are very careful in terms of how it's been applied. So I think that there's this perception somehow that we're just sending in a whole bunch of strikes willy-nilly. This is a targeted, focused effort at people who are on a list of active terrorists who are trying to go in and harm Americans, hit American facilities, American bases, and so on. It is important for everybody to understand that this thing is kept on a very tight leash. It's not a bunch of folks in a room somewhere just making decisions. And it is also part and parcel of our overall authority when it comes to battling Al-Qaeda. It is not something that's being used beyond that.
Mr. President, do you think that possibly these drone strikes, do they send the message that the U.S. is interfering in other countries' affairs? Because I feel like, regardless of how much we do, people in other countries might perceive that we're interfering, and that might not be good for us. Is there a way that we're combating that?
Well, I think that we have to be judicious in how we use drones, but understand that probably our ability to respect the sovereignty of other countries and to limit our incursions into somebody else's territory is enhanced by the fact that we are able to pinpoint strike an Al-Qaeda operative in a place where the capacities of that military in that country may not be able to get them. So obviously a lot of these strikes have been in the Fatah and going after Al-Qaeda suspects who are up in very tough terrain along the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. For us to be able to get them in another way would involve probably a lot more intrusive military actions than the one that we're already engaging in. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful about how we proceed on this. Obviously, I'm looking forward to a time where Al-Qaeda is no longer an operative network, and we can refocus a lot of our assets and attention on other issues. But this is something that we're still having to deal with. There are still active plots that are directed against the United States, and I think we are on the offense now. Al-Qaeda's been really weakened, but we've still got a little more work to do, and we've got to make sure that we're using all our capacities in order to deal with it.
Mr. President, I want to change gears for a second and move on to the topic of education. And I think there's no better place to start this conversation than with Adam and his classmates out in Fremont. Adam, let's hear from you.
Hi, Mr. President. Once again, this is an honor to be a part of this, so thank you for taking time out. But my question is, at a time when Americans are struggling to pay for daily necessities, you've continued to push higher education for all Americans, but what is your plan to help students pay off all their student loans?
Well, first of all, when I say a college education, I think what people should be clear about is I'm really talking about higher education, education beyond high school. It doesn't mean that everybody needs a 4-year college education. It may be that somebody has incredible aptitude with computer graphics and they want to be a computer designer, and they may just need a couple of years at a community college to get those skills before they're immediately on the job. It may be somebody has mechanical aptitude and they want to become a skilled tool maker, and they can get a training program in a year or two that allows them to work with high-tech equipment in a factory. But the point is that it's very hard for somebody who just has a high school education to be able to get a well-paying job that allows you to support a family. And I want to encourage everybody to have access to that higher education, whether it's at a community college or a 4-year college or beyond. Now, what we've tried to do is to make college more affordable without putting more of a burden on taxpayers. One of the biggest things we did last year was to sign into law a bill that took away $60 billion in subsidies that were going to banks because they were the middleman on the student loan program. We said, let's give the loans directly to students. We can take those billions of dollars and we can provide more assistance to students directly. And that's helped a lot of students. We've also got coming up a concern of mine. If Congress doesn't act, then the interest rates on student loans are going to go up this summer. And so I've urged Congress at the State of the Union to do something about that right away, as well as extend existing tax credits that help families. But the final thing that I've been trying to encourage is for colleges and universities to think more about how to make higher education affordable. Some of this is not the faults of colleges and universities. When it comes to state colleges and universities, they've been getting less support from the states. And so I urge state legislatures to do their job and prioritize higher education more in their budgets. But every college and university can also think about, are there additional ways that they can hold down costs? And what we're going to start doing is incentivizing, providing additional dollars to those schools that have come up with creative ways to keep costs down. Some schools, for example, are saying you can get a degree in 3 years. Well, that saves you a year's worth of tuition, but you get the same skills base that allows you to go out there and work. There may be better ways to use technology. I mean, you look at what we're doing today. This is something where potentially a lot of folks can take classes without ever actually being in a classroom and having all the costs of room and board. So there may be ways that we can reduce costs. I want to encourage those, but I want all of you guys to understand you can't stop at high school. First of all, you got to graduate, and then you guys are going to have to do some more stuff because we're going to need you.
Adam, what do you think of?
Well, I would just like to know, what advice would you give to a person like me that does come from a middle-class family, and we would struggle to make ends meet and possibly not being able to find a job after receiving this higher education? What advice would you have as far as wanting to still pursue a higher education with the fear of not being able to pay off those student loans?
Well, first of all, you're going to be able to afford college. You will probably take on some debt. Michelle and I took on debt when we graduated from college and law school. We were able to pay it off. It is important, though, and I wish that it wasn't the case, where you could just go to college and have fun for 4 years and then after that kind of make up your mind what you want to do. I think young people probably have a little more responsibility now to think ahead to make sure that when you make that investment, it's actually in pursuing a career where you can have some confidence that you're going to be able to find a job down the road. You know, I think that sometimes young people go into school and it's 4 years of having fun, and then sort of their senior year they start thinking, oh, you know, I better start thinking about what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. You know, college is a big enough investment now where you've got to kind of think ahead, and you know, your counselors and you know, other adults can potentially help you to identify what are going to be some of the growth areas of the future so that you make a good investment.
You know, Mr. President, I agree with you. I'm sure there are some kids that do go to school 3 years, and the fourth year they're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? But really, I don't believe that's a lot of kids. A lot of high school kids, college kids have seen their parents get laid off and no money. And because of the downturn of the economy, a lot of kids, high school kids, college kids, well, even mainly, you know, high school kids like we're talking today, they worry about even entering college because they don't want to have that debt. They don't, you know, they see their father not even able to have a job. I mean, I can understand that valid fear. I'm sure, though, there are kids that do go to school and they kind of goof off and then they're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? But for the most part, I believe that our kids are just seeing what is happening with the economy, and it's affecting them.
Well, you know, Jennifer, you're absolutely right that obviously the last 3 years has been tough, especially for young people getting out of college and starting their careers. On the other hand, here's what's really important to know, and we as parents have to communicate this to our kids. The unemployment rate for folks who only have a high school diploma is multiple times higher than for folks who've got a college degree. So even in this economic downturn, even as tough as things have been, the odds that you are going to do much, much better over your lifetime, over your career in terms of lifetime earnings, being able to find a job, not being at as high a risk of unemployment, is much better if you've gotten a higher education degree. So you're right that, you know, when times are tough, obviously people are a lot more concerned about taking on debt. And I think it's good that a lot of young people are trying to stay focused and saying, all right, before I make this investment, what is it that I'm going to get out of it? But it's important to remember that that investment is still the best thing that young people can do, although not everybody needs a 4-year degree. And one of the things we've got to do more of is to try to link up high school students who may have, as I said, the capacity to become a really skilled worker, but they don't necessarily need a BA in order to do it. And they may end up saving money going and getting a 2-year degree as opposed to a 4-year degree. So it's going to vary by people.
Mr. President, I want to take some time.
Go ahead,
sorry, short follow. I want to make sure we have some time for a few more internet questions, but quick follow?
Yeah, I was just going to share with you my story, Mr. President. Personally, just I think the other thing is that parents can also plan far more in advance. I know in my case, my son just got a full scholarship to a college on the East Coast, but we worked hard for that. We planned, we saved years in advance. We tried to encourage him to be smart enough to get that academic scholarship. We're also middle class. I don't have a lot of money. However, we've worked hard as a family to help nurture that soil, as it were. So when he's 17 now, when he graduates, thankfully, he's in play now that we don't have to have any debt. So everybody can't do that, but I just wanted to share that personal story of advanced preparation for families as well. If that helps someone.
Right. Well, the point is it's still a good investment, Jennifer. But you're absolutely right that look, you know, any time that we go through the kind of economic crisis we went through in 2008, 2009. Now, that's going to affect the psyches of a lot of young people, and that's why we have to make sure that they're thinking not just what's happening over the next year or two, but as the economy grows stronger, reminding them that when those jobs come back, for example, when I talked to a group of CEOs who are bringing manufacturing jobs back here to the United States, I want all those young people to be ready and able to start hiring or getting hired right away because they've got the skill sets that are going to be needed for them to be able to succeed.
Mr. President, I want to make sure we make some time for questions that you actually didn't address in your State of the Union speech, but that a lot of the internet community rallied around. The first one's on the topic of this Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA. A lot of internet companies, including Google, have spoken out against this, but a lot of activity on YouTube on this question. And let's watch this video from Benjamin Yeager in Jacksonville, Florida.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Benjamin Yeager. In the past few weeks, we've seen some bills come up regarding internet piracy, most notably SOPA and PIPA. My question for you is, how do you intend to combat internet piracy while at the same time maintaining the flow of free speech on the internet? And where do you draw the line between legitimate attempts to combat internet piracy and putting too much censorship on the internet?
Well, I think Benjamin framed the question right. And one of the things that we're doing is using the laws we have to enforce and make sure that intellectual property is protected. So we just had, the Justice Department just announced one of the biggest indictments in cooperation with a range of other countries around internet piracy internationally. But I think that it's going to be possible for us to make sure that we're protecting intellectual property that creates a lot of jobs in this country. It's one of the United States' biggest exports is all our knowledge-based products, but also do it in a way where it's not affecting the fundamental integrity of the internet as an open, transparent system. And what I've suggested is that both sides, the content side, the server sides, they need to come together and work with us to create a system in which we've got strong protections in place, but the basic architecture that's made the internet so powerful and such a open system ends up being preserved. And I think we can do that.
Mr. President, a lot of people are probably wondering what was the #1 voted question of all the 135,000 or so questions that were submitted. What was #1? It was actually a text question. I'm going to read it to you now. It comes from Michael Mozart in Connecticut, and he writes, "Why are you personally supporting the extradition of British citizen Richard O'Dwyer for solely linking to copyright infringing works using an extradition treaty designed to combat terrorism and bring terrorists to judgment in the U.S.?" And for those of you who don't know who Richard O'Dwyer is, he's a British student. The Justice Department is apparently seeking to extradite him to the U.S. for copyright infringement.
Yeah, well, first of all, Steve, I'm not personally doing anything because...
Yeah, I'm reading exactly what he wrote.
But I want to make sure everybody understands.
Yeah.
One of the ways our system works is that the president doesn't get involved with prosecution decisions or extradition decisions, and this has been a decision by the Justice Department. What I can say broadly is that we want to make sure that intellectual property is protected. We want to make sure that the creative works of people in this country aren't expropriated, but we want to do it in a way that's consistent with internet freedom. And we're just going to keep on working on it. When SOPA came up on the Hill, we expressed some concerns about the way that the legislation had been written. Told folks, let's go back to the table and let's try to figure something out that works for everybody.
Mr. President, our final YouTube question today comes from a YouTube celebrity, actually, and I think he's someone that you're going to recognize. Let's take a look.
Dear Mr. President, it's me, your premier President Barack Obama, impressionist of the United States of America. And let me be clear. Do you believe that comedy, such as my videos or SNL, etc., can influence the outcome of an election? Thank you. God bless you. I'm not actually you. However, I do endorse this question. Oh, I got to get that. See you later. Hello?
Well, first of all, the only problem with that guy is he doesn't have any gray hair. And so he needs to update his act a little bit. One of the great things, it's interesting, I was with some ambassadors from some other countries today. We host a reception here at the White House for all the ambassadors, and they remarked that one of the things that makes America special is in most countries you don't have the sort of comedy and satire about people in power that we do here. And so I don't know if any of this stuff affects an election, but I know that it makes our country stronger, that you can make fun of the president or anybody, and everybody can get a laugh. And that also makes sure to remind me that, you know, I work for you guys. And that's part also of the kinds of interactions that we're having today. That makes our country stronger. It gives me ideas. It allows me to come away and say, you know what, let's follow up on this, or let's follow up on that issue, whether it's coming from a high school class or whether it's coming from the spouse of somebody who's unemployed. It really, I think, speaks to the strength of our democracy, and that kind of participation is something that I want to just keep on encouraging.
Well, we're almost out of time, Mr.
President.
President. Actually, Jennifer, we're almost out of time. I know the President's time is precious. I do want to make sure that everyone gets a chance, though, to ask a quick personal question before we leave. And Jennifer, let's start with you.
Hey, okay. You just spoke of laughs. I was wondering if you could stand up and give us a little jig real quick.
Oh, no dancing. I sing once in a while, but Michelle, Michelle always makes fun of my dancing. And
okay, well then
she teases me relentlessly because she's the superior dancer. So what can I do? In some future Google Plus, I may sing another tune.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go to Paris.
So, Mr. President, in 10 years, when I finish all of my medical school residency training and everything, can I be your doctor? Would that be cool?
Well, I tell you what, I've got a terrific doctor. He's in the military, though, so you're going to have to sign up to serve to be the president's doctor. But presumably by that time, I won't be president anymore. So, you know, I'll see if we're living in the same city. You look like you might know what you're doing.
Okay.
Ramon?
Hey, Mr. President, before I get to my question, if you're ever looking for a technology expert in small business, please feel free to ask for me. I'd love to stop by the White House and help you. My question, Mr. President, if you ever want Doritos or Snickers or Coke late at night, you can't walk outside and get it. How do you feel about that? That you can't just walk out the White House door on your own? How do you feel?
You know, it's actually the toughest thing about being president. Look, this is the greatest job on earth, and it's such an honor to serve. But it is true sometimes you get a little stir crazy because if I decide I just want to go to the corner store, I've got to alert Secret Service, and the ambulance has to get in place, and you know, if we're crossing a bridge, suddenly there's got to be some boats in the water, and so at a certain point you just say, you know what, forget it. So one of the things I look forward to after I've had this extraordinary honor of serving is just going out and taking a walk, or waking up on Saturday morning, not shaving, and just going to the local Starbucks and not having to worry about it.
Thank you.
Adam, let's hear from you in Fremont.
So my school, Mr. President, is the smallest school in our area, and we're often forgotten about and talked down upon the public eye. What would you say about possibly coming to visit my school and playing a little bit of tennis with me?
Well, I tell you what, I know you can beat me at tennis, so if you wanted to just humiliate me on the court, you know, I'd give you the opportunity if I'm in town. But you may be the smallest school. I don't know how many other schools have the president talking to their student body, though. So I think you've got a little claim to fame now. You can go ahead and thump your chest out there after we sign off.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
You bet.
Christine, let's hear from you.
Mr. President, I hear that you and the First Lady, just like my husband and I, are celebrating your 20th wedding anniversary sometime
this year.
This year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I am just wondering if you can talk about what you're doing to celebrate, or what you intend to do, or if have you already had the anniversary?
No, you know, the anniversaries, our anniversary is on October 3rd.
Okay.
Sadly, it's a month before the election. So I don't know. I don't know how romantic a weekend we're actually going to get. We may have to defer the full celebration until later in November. But
that's understandable.
You know, I tell you what. Without being corny, I'm sure your husband feels the same way. You know, the fact that you guys put up with us for 20 years. Is pretty remarkable, and I'm grateful for it every day.
I hope my husband's watching right now.
I'm on 17.
Mr. President, Mr. President, if it's all right with you, may I just introduce you to my children who are sitting just off camera? Come on over, guys. Just put your faces right over here. Quickly, quickly. Just come on over.
Hey, guys.
Let Nate in too.
Hey.
Say hi.
How's it going?
What do you say?
You doing all right?
I think they're speechless.
Make sure to study hard in school and do what your mom tells you.
Study hard in school and do what I tell you, is what he said. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, Mr. President. Well, we want to thank you again on behalf of the 250,000 people on YouTube and all of us here in the Hangout, of course. We really appreciate you taking the time for us, and we look forward to seeing you again on Google Plus real soon.
Steve, this was great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr.
Jennifer,
President.
remember to send me that information.
I sure will.
Okay.
Thank you. I wrote a book.
Thanks. Send me a copy.
Okay.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.